They must not see her first. Lady Marceline said it softly, but the words were sharp enough to cut through the breakfast room. Across the polished table, Lord Everard Whitcomb lowered his newspaper just enough to look at his eldest daughter. Miss Evelina Whitcomb stood near the window with a basket of folded linen in her arms. Morning light touched the side of her face, but no one in the room seemed to notice how tired she looked. No one ever did. Her younger sister, Rosamond, sat beside their mother in pale pink silk, her curls arranged carefully around her cheeks, her engagement prospects displayed upon her like jewels. She had not yet finished her tea, but already 2 maids waited behind her chair, with ribbons, gloves, and a shawl chosen for the important visitors expected that afternoon. Important visitors. That was what Lady Marceline had called them. Everyone in Ashmere House knew the truth. A duke was coming. Not just any duke. His Grace, Duke Lucian Ravenscar of Northwick. The richest unmarried man in 3 counties, cold, powerful, famously impossible to please, and newly returned from London after refusing half the young women pushed into his path during the season. Lord Everard had spent 3 weeks arranging this visit. Lady Marceline had spent 3 weeks preparing Rosamond to be admired, and Evelina had spent 3 weeks making sure the house did not collapse beneath their ambition. She had checked guest rooms, corrected menus, arranged flowers, soothed servants, mended Rosamond's torn gloves, copied her father's letters, and quietly sold 2 pieces of her mother's old lace to cover the cost of imported fruit, without anyone discovering the household accounts were thinning. Yet now, standing with linen in her arms, she heard her mother say, "They must not see her first." Rosamond looked at Evelina and smiled with false sweetness. "Mamma only means the Duke should be greeted properly." Evelina's fingers tightened on the basket. "And I am improper." Rosamond gave a little laugh. "You are practical, Lena. That is different." Lord Everard folded his newspaper. "Do not begin a scene before breakfast is cleared." A scene. That was what truth became whenever Evelina spoke it aloud. Lady Marceline adjusted the pearl bracelet on Rosamond's wrist, barely glancing at her eldest daughter. "You know what is at stake. Rosamond is 19, beautiful, charming, exactly the sort of young woman a duke should notice." The silence after that sentence was worse than an insult, because everyone knew what remained unspoken. Evelina was 28, unmarried. Too old for hope, according to the whispers of society. Too useful to be treated as a daughter. Too familiar to be admired. She set the linen basket down carefully. "I understand." Rosamond tilted her head. "Do you? Because sometimes you forget. You speak too much at dinner. You correct father in front of guests. You discuss estate matters as though gentlemen enjoy hearing women speak of drainage, tenant roofs, and accounts." Lord Everard's face hardened. "Enough, Rosamond." But he did not defend Evelina. He only disliked open unpleasantness before the day's performance had properly begun. Lady Marceline rose. "Evelina, you will remain upstairs until after luncheon. Once His Grace has been introduced to Rosamond, you may come down briefly. Wear the grey gown." "The grey one is faded." "Exactly," Rosamond murmured. Lady Marceline shot her youngest daughter a warning look, but not because the words were cruel. Because they were too honest. Evelina looked at her mother. "I arranged the luncheon, and we are grateful. I selected the roses because Rosamond said lilies make her sneeze." "Yes, dear. I wrote to Mrs. Hawthorne for the musicians. I sat with Cook until midnight after the sugar delivery failed. Evelina." Her father's voice ended the list. She stopped. Lord Everard stood and looked at her, as though she were a problem requiring management, not a daughter requiring kindness. "You have done your part. Now allow your sister to do hers." Rosamond lowered her lashes, pretending embarrassment. But Evelina saw the triumph underneath. She picked up the linen basket again. "As you wish." And she left the breakfast room while her family continued planning how best to hide her. By noon, Ashmere House looked wealthier than it truly was. Sunlight poured through tall windows onto polished floors, silver vases overflowed with white roses. The drawing room smelled of beeswax, lavender, and sugared almonds. Every chair had been positioned to make Rosamond appear naturally illuminated when she sat near the pianoforte. Nothing about it was natural. Evelina knew because she had arranged every inch. She stood upstairs in the narrow corridor outside the linen room, wearing the faded grey gown her mother had chosen. It was neat, modest, and nearly invisible. Her dark hair was pinned simply at the back of her neck. No pearls, no ribbons, no effort wasted on a woman no one intended to present. Below, she heard carriage wheels roll across the gravel drive. A maid gasped. "He has arrived." The house shifted at once. Footmen rushed, doors opened, Lady Marceline's voice rose into its polished society tone. Rosamond laughed softly, the laugh she had practiced for 3 days. Evelina remained upstairs. She told herself she did not care. That was the lie unmarried daughters learn to survive on. She moved toward the back staircase, intending to check the kitchen before luncheon, when a small crash sounded from below. Not from the drawing room, from the servants' hall. Then a frightened cry. Evelina dropped the linen and hurried down. In the lower corridor, little Thomas, the scullery boy, stood frozen beside a shattered dish of sugared pears. His face was white with terror. Honey syrup spread across the floor near his shoes. Cook would rage. Lady Marceline would call it disgraceful. Lord Everard would say servants had become careless. Thomas began to tremble. "I did not mean to, Miss Evelina. The tray slipped. Please, they will send me away." Evelina knelt immediately. "Look at me. Are you cut?" "No, miss." "Then breathe. Broken dishes are not tragedies. They are when they cost more than my wages." Her heart clenched. She took a cloth from a nearby shelf and began gathering the pieces herself. "Go to the pantry. Bring the preserved cherries from the top shelf and the small dish of cream. We will make it seem intentional." Thomas blinked through tears. Intentional? Ashmere pears with cherry cream, a rare family variation. Despite himself, the boy almost smiled. She was still kneeling when a shadow fell across the corridor. Evelina looked up. A man stood at the entrance to the servants' hall. Tall, darkly dressed, still. His black coat was cut with severe elegance. His face carried the composed expression of someone accustomed to being obeyed, yet his eyes were not on the broken dish. They were on her. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then he said, "That is an unusual way to save dessert." Evelina rose quickly, heat touching her face. "Your Grace." She knew him at once. Everyone knew him. Duke Lucian Ravenscar. He inclined his head slightly. "Miss Whitcomb, I presume." The shock nearly made her forget herself. "You know my name. Your father mentioned 2 daughters. Then I am surprised he allowed you to discover the spare one so quickly." The words escaped before caution could stop them. A faint change touched the Duke's mouth, not quite a smile. Spare things are often the most useful in a crisis. She could not tell if he was mocking her. His eyes moved to the broken dish, then to Thomas hiding half behind the pantry door. "No one is dismissed over pears," the Duke said. Thomas stared at him. "Yes, Your Grace." Lucian looked back at Evelina. "I took the wrong corridor while your family was arranging themselves." The dryness in his voice almost startled a laugh from her. "They arrange very well. So I noticed." Above them, Lady Marceline's voice rang through the hallway. "Your Grace!" Panic flickered across Evelina's chest. Her mother would be horrified to find the Duke in the servants' corridor with the daughter she had tried to hide. Lucian did not move immediately. Instead, he studied Evelina, as though the moment interested him far more than the performance waiting upstairs. "You are not joining luncheon? I was instructed to appear after the important introduction." His eyes sharpened. "Instructed?" Evelina looked away. "I should not have said that." "No," he said quietly, "but I am glad you did." Before she could answer, Lady Marceline appeared at the corridor entrance. Her smile froze. "Evelina." The single word carried warning, embarrassment, and fury. Then she turned to the Duke with desperate warmth. "Your Grace, how unfortunate. You have found our household in a little confusion." Lucian looked at the broken dish. "I found your daughter preventing one." Lady Marceline's smile trembled. "Yes, well, Evelina has always been very capable with domestic troubles. Domestic troubles. Not intelligent, not composed, not kind. Capable with domestic troubles. Evelina lowered her eyes. But Duke Lucian did not. He offered his arm. To luncheon, Miss Whitcomb. Lady Marceline looked as though the floor had shifted. Rosamond is waiting in the drawing room, Your Grace. I am aware. Still, his arm remained offered to Evelina. Every servant in the corridor went silent. Evelina knew what accepting would do. She knew her mother would punish her later with soft words and cold eyes. She knew Rosamond would never forgive the humiliation. But she also knew the Duke was not asking by accident. So she placed her hand lightly on his sleeve, and together they walked upstairs. In the drawing room, Rosamond stood in perfect sunlight. The pink gown, the pearls, the curls, the practiced laugh. Everything was ready. Then Duke Lucian entered with Evelina on his arm. The room went dead silent. Rosamond's smile faltered. Lord Everard stared as though his eldest daughter had appeared from a sealed portrait. Lady Marceline hurried in behind them, pale with alarm. Miss Evelina was kind enough to redirect me, the Duke said calmly. Rosamond recovered quickly. How fortunate. Lena is always useful when people lose their way. The insult was wrapped in silk. Lucian looked at her. Indeed, though I find those who know the unpolished corridors of a house often understand its true structure best. Rosamond blinked. She did not know whether she had been corrected. Evelina did. Luncheon began with strained elegance. Rosamond performed beautifully at first. She spoke of music, London gowns, the latest court gossip, and a poem she had memorized but not understood. Lady Marceline laughed at every charming remark. Lord Everard watched the Duke's face for signs of interest. There were none. Lucian answered politely, ate sparingly, and asked Evelina one question. Only one. What happens to the North Tenant cottages when the river rises? The table froze. Rosamond's fork paused. Lord Everard coughed. Evelina looked at the Duke carefully. You know about the river? I passed the lower fields on my way here. 3 roofs are patched badly. 2 walls have water damage. Lord Everard shifted. The matter is being handled. No, it is not, Evelina said before fear could stop her. Her father's eyes flashed. But Lucian turned fully toward her. Go on. The room held its breath. Evelina placed her hands in her lap. The drainage trench was never extended beyond the old mill road. If it is not cleared before the autumn rain, the cottages will flood again. Mr. Bell has 3 children. Mrs. Arden is nearly blind. They cannot endure another winter damp. Lucian listened without interruption. What would you do? Sell the unused hunting horses and repair the trench. Lord Everard's face reddened. Rosamond laughed lightly. Oh, Lena, how dreary. His Grace did not come here to hear about mud. Lucian looked at her. On the contrary, I have always found mud more honest than drawing rooms. The silence that followed was exquisite. Evelina lowered her eyes to hide the dangerous warmth rising in her chest. For the first time in years, someone had not told her to stop speaking. Someone had asked her to continue. By the end of luncheon, Lord Everard was uneasy, Lady Marceline was strained, and Rosamond was silently furious. The Duke had been expected to admire the younger daughter. Instead, his attention kept returning to the one they had hidden upstairs. And that was only the beginning. Because the following week, a formal invitation arrived at Ashmere House. Not for Rosamond, not for Lady Marceline, not for the family. It was addressed in strong black ink to Miss Evelina Whitcomb. His Grace, Duke Lucian Ravenscar, requests the honour of Miss Whitcomb's company at Northwick Hall. For the first time in her life, Evelina held a letter no one in her family could pretend belonged to someone else. Lady Marceline read the invitation 3 times. Then she read it a 4th time, as though the words might rearrange themselves into something more acceptable. They did not. Miss Evelina Whitcomb. Not Miss Rosamond Whitcomb. Not Lord and Lady Whitcomb and daughters. Only Evelina. Across the morning room, Rosamond stood motionless beside the pianoforte. Her pretty face had gone pale in a way powder could not soften. Lord Everard took the letter from his wife's hand. His brows drew together. This is irregular. This is irregular. Evelina stood near the doorway, hands folded calmly before her. Inside, nothing about her was calm. The invitation had arrived on a silver tray at breakfast. The butler had announced the ducal seal. Rosamond had smiled before it was opened, already imagining victory. Then Lady Marceline had gone silent. That silence had become the most satisfying sound Evelina had heard in years. Rosamond spoke first. Perhaps His Grace wishes to thank Lena for assisting with the dessert accident. Evelina looked at her sister. One does not invite a woman to Northwick Hall because of pears. Rosamond's eyes flashed. Lady Marceline quickly intervened. We shall all attend, of course. The invitation is addressed to Evelina, Lord Everard said slowly. Yes, but propriety requires family accompaniment. Propriety did not require you to hide her upstairs last week, said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Aunt Honoria stood there with her cane in one hand and a shawl over her shoulders, her silver hair tucked beneath a lace cap. She was Lord Everard's widowed sister, tolerated because she possessed a small independent income and the rare courage to speak inconvenient truths. Rosamond stiffened. Aunt Honoria, you misunderstand. I am old, not stupid. Evelina almost smiled. Lady Marceline pressed a hand to her temple. This is not helpful. No, Aunt Honoria said, walking in, but it may be honest, which this family could use in moderation. Lord Everard ignored her. We will accept. Evelina will attend with her mother and sister. Rosamond, you will wear the blue silk. His Grace may have invited Evelina out of courtesy, but that does not mean his attention cannot be redirected. Evelina's chest tightened. There it was. Even a letter with her name on it could be turned into Rosamond's opportunity. Aunt Honoria's cane struck the floor once. Or perhaps the Duke knows exactly whom he invited. Rosamond's voice sharpened. Why would he? The room went still. Evelina looked at her younger sister. Rosamond lifted her chin, too proud to retreat. I am only asking what everyone is thinking. Why would a duke choose to single out Lena? She is nearly 30. She dresses like a governess. She speaks of tenants at luncheon. She has no dowry worth mentioning. If His Grace is interested, there must be some other reason. Lady Marceline whispered, Rosamond. But the damage had already bloomed. Evelina's face burned. Aunt Honoria turned slowly toward Rosamond. My dear, beauty is a pleasant lantern, but it becomes useless in a room where someone needs a fire. Rosamond's mouth parted. Lord Everard folded the invitation. Enough. We attend tomorrow. But Evelina knew what would happen. Her family would polish Rosamond brighter, dress Evelina duller, and hope Duke Lucian's first interest had been nothing more than curiosity. They did not understand. Neither did she. That frightened her most. Northwick Hall stood beyond a black iron gate, surrounded by ancient trees and winter gardens cut into severe lines. The house itself was enormous, built of pale stone darkened by weather, with towers rising at each corner and long windows reflecting the grey afternoon sky. It was not pretty, like Ashmere House. It was powerful, a place that did not need to persuade anyone of its importance. Rosamond stared from the carriage window, her earlier confidence returning. He lives like a prince. Lady Marceline adjusted her daughter's blue silk sleeve. Remember to laugh softly, not too much, and do not mention London unless he does first. Evelina sat opposite them in the same grey gown. Her mother had insisted. You look sensible in grey, she had said. Sensible. The word society used for women it did not wish to call beautiful. Aunt Honoria had nearly struck the floorboards with her cane in protest, but Evelina stopped her. Let them think grey could hide her. She was beginning to learn that being underestimated had uses. At Northwick Hall, a grave butler led them into a grand entrance, lined with portraits of stern Ravenscar ancestors. Servants bowed. Fires burned in massive hearths. Somewhere deeper in the house, a child laughed. Evelina noticed it. A child's laughter did not match the Duke's cold reputation. Before she could wonder more, Duke Lucian entered. He wore dark blue instead of black, and somehow that small difference made him seem less severe. His gaze moved over Lady Marceline, paused politely on Rosamond, then settled on Evelina. Miss Whitcomb. Her pulse betrayed her. Your Grace. Rosamond curtsied beautifully. How kind of you to receive us. Lucian inclined his head. I am pleased you could accompany your sister. The words were flawless. The meaning was brutal. Rosamond's smile tightened. Lady Marceline rushed in. We were delighted by your invitation. Rosamond has been speaking of Northwick all morning. How fortunate for Northwick, Lucian said. Evelina bit the inside of her cheek. He turned to her. There is someone I would like you to meet. He did not ask Rosamond to play piano. He did not invite Lady Marceline to admire the room. He led Evelina toward the library. Her family followed because they had no choice. Inside the library, a little girl of about 6 sat on the carpet, surrounded by wooden soldiers, picture books, and a small dog sleeping beneath a chair. She had dark curls, serious eyes, and ink on one finger. The moment Lucian entered, she sprang up. Uncle Lucian, I did not spill the ink this time. His mouth softened. I am reassured. The girl looked at Evelina. Is this the lady from the Pear story? Evelina blinked. Rosamond whispered, Pear story. Lucian's eyes warmed faintly. This is Miss Whitcomb. Miss Whitcomb, my niece, Lady Amabel Ravenscar. Amabel curtsied with exaggerated importance. I am almost 7. That is a very serious age, Evelina said. I know, Evelina smiled. Amabel studied her. Can you fix soldiers? Can you fix soldiers? I can try. The child handed her a wooden soldier, with one arm loose at the shoulder. Evelina sat beside her on the carpet without thinking. Lady Marceline gasped softly. Rosamond looked horrified. A woman did not sit on the carpet at a ducal visit. But Evelina had spent half her life mending things no one else noticed. A toy soldier seemed honest work. Lucian watched silently as she adjusted the tiny joint, asked for a ribbon thread, and secured the loose arm neatly. Amabel took it back with wonder. You are useful. Rosamond gave a little laugh. She is very useful. This time Evelina looked up. Yes, she said calmly. I am. Rosamond's smile faltered. Lucian's gaze deepened with unmistakable approval. After tea was served, Lady Marceline attempted every strategy. She praised Rosamond's singing. Rosamond sang. Lucian listened politely and asked Amabel whether the song was too loud. She praised Rosamond's embroidery. Rosamond displayed a handkerchief. Amabel sneezed into it by accident. She praised Rosamond's charm. Rosamond smiled until her cheeks ached. Then Amabel climbed onto the chair beside Evelina and asked if she would read. Evelina took the book. No performance, no simpering, no attempt to impress. She simply read. Her voice changed gently for each character. Amabel leaned closer. Even the little dog lifted its head. The room quieted around her. Lucian watched from near the fireplace. Lady Marceline saw his expression and grew afraid. Not interested. Not amused. Moved. That was worse. After the reading, Lucian invited Evelina to view the winter garden. Propriety required company, so Lady Marceline and Rosamond followed 10 paces behind, pretending not to listen. Cold light filled the glass house. Orange trees stood in neat rows. Ferns trembled near heated pipes. Outside, frost silvered the lawns. You are good with children, Lucian said. I am good with people who are not trying to impress me. He looked at her. She flushed. I apologize. Do not. It is the most honest sentence anyone has said to me this week. They walked slowly between the trees. Amabel lost her parents last year, he said. My brother and his wife. Fever. Evelina's expression softened. I am sorry. She has dismissed 4 governesses, bitten 1 companion, and declared war on French verbs. That seems reasonable. French verbs are arrogant. Lucian glanced at her, and this time he truly smiled. It changed his face so suddenly that Evelina forgot her next breath. She liked you, he said. I liked her. Because she is a child. Because she is lonely and trying not to seem frightened. His smile faded, but not with displeasure. You notice that quickly. I know something about seeming useful so no one notices you are hurt. The words slipped out too quietly for her family behind them to hear, but Lucian heard. They stopped beside a small orange tree. For a moment, the glass house felt separate from the world. "Your family does not value you," he said. It was not a question. Evelina looked through the glass at the pale gardens. "They value what I do. That is not the same thing." "No. Why do you stay?" She laughed softly, without humor. "Where would I go? Unmarried daughters do not simply leave because they are unhappy. They do if they are brave." She turned to him. "They do if they have somewhere to be brave toward." Lucian's expression changed. Before he could answer, Rosamond's voice cut through the glass house. "Your Grace, Mama was just saying the roses at Ashmere will be extraordinary this spring." Lucian turned slowly. "How pleasant." Rosamond stepped closer, desperate now. "I should be happy to show them to you when they bloom." A direct invitation. Lady Marceline held her breath. Lord Everard, had he been present, would have praised the boldness. Lucian looked at Rosamond. "I do not think that will be necessary." Rosamond blinked. "Your Grace?" He spoke gently, but the finality in his tone was unmistakable. "You are very accomplished, Miss Rosamond, but I am not seeking accomplishment arranged for display." The colour drained from her face. Lady Marceline stiffened. Lucian turned back to Evelina. "I prefer character revealed by accident." Evelina could not move. Rosamond's humiliation filled the glass house like smoke. The visit ended soon after. In the carriage home, no one spoke for nearly 10 minutes. Then Rosamond said, "You did this deliberately." Evelina turned from the window. "Did what?" "Made yourself pitiful, helpful, plain. Men like His Grace enjoy feeling superior. You let him rescue you." Evelina stared at her sister. "I was sitting on a carpet fixing a soldier. And he looked at you as if you were a saint." Lady Marceline's lips pressed tightly together. "Enough." But Rosamond would not stop. "You have always envied me." Evelina almost laughed. The accusation was so absurd it became painful. "Rosamond, I have spent years arranging rooms so men would notice you first." "Then why did this one notice you?" The carriage went silent. Evelina looked out at the passing winter fields. Perhaps because he entered through the wrong corridor. That evening, Lord Everard was informed of the visit's failure. His rage was quiet, which made it worse. "You embarrassed your sister," he said to Evelina in the study. "I did nothing." "Exactly. You stood there doing nothing while he insulted Rosamond by preferring you." Evelina absorbed the sentence. There it was. Her greatest offence was being chosen. Lord Everard poured brandy with an unsteady hand. "You will discourage this." She looked at him. "What?" "If Ravenscar calls again, you will make it clear you are not interested." For a moment, Evelina thought she had misheard. "You want me to reject a duke?" "I want you to protect your sister's prospects." "And mine?" He looked at her as if the word itself were inconvenient. "You are not a girl anymore, Evelina." The cruelty was tired, almost bored. That made it worse. Something inside her, bent for years, began to straighten. "No," she said quietly. Lord Everard turned. "No? I will not reject a man simply because he failed to admire Rosamond first." His face darkened. "You forget yourself." "No, father. I think I am remembering myself for the first time." The slap did not come. Lord Everard was too controlled for that. Instead, he said something colder. "If you pursue this and fail, do not expect this family to carry your humiliation." Evelina's throat tightened. "You have carried Rosamond's hopes for years. You might have carried one of mine for an afternoon." She left before he could answer. But outside the study door, unseen in the shadows, Rosamond stood listening. Her face was wet with angry tears, and by morning she had made a plan. If the Duke would not choose her willingly, society would be made to believe he had no choice at all. The rumour appeared first at Lady Fenwick's card table. By evening, it had crossed 3 drawing rooms. By the next morning, it had reached London. Duke Lucian Ravenscar, people whispered, had not invited Miss Evelina Whitcomb to Northwick Hall because he admired her. He had done so because she possessed letters. Compromising letters. Letters from his late brother. Letters connected to the death of Amabel's parents. Letters that could damage the Ravenscar name if they became public. It was an ugly rumor because it was vague enough to be believed. No one knew what the letters said. No one had seen them. No one could explain how an unmarried woman from Ashmere House had supposedly acquired them. But society did not require proof when suspicion tasted interesting. At breakfast, Lady Marceline entered the room holding a newspaper society column with trembling fingers. Lord Everard read it once and went still. Rosamond sat near the window, pretending confusion beautifully. "How dreadful," she whispered. "Who would say such things?" Evelina looked at her. Rosamond did not blink. Aunt Honoria, however, stared at the younger girl with open disgust. Someone small enough to mistake poison for strategy. Rosamond's eyes filled with tears on command. "Aunt, how can you imply I would ruin my own family?" Honoria's mouth tightened. "Because I have heard you speak when no gentlemen were present." Lord Everard slammed the newspaper down. "Enough. This scandal must be contained." Evelina felt cold from the inside out. Not because society might believe she had trapped a duke, but because somewhere at Northwick Hall, Lucian might read the same words and wonder if choosing her had been a mistake. A footman entered before anyone could speak again. A letter for Miss Evelina. Every face turned. The seal was black. Northwick. Evelina opened it with fingers that did not feel like her own. The message was short. "Come to Northwick today if you trust me. If you do not, send only the word no, and I will still defend your name." She read it twice. Her eyes burned. Lady Marceline reached for the paper. "What does he say?" Evelina folded it. "He asks whether I trust him." Rosamond laughed bitterly. "How romantic. Perhaps he should ask whether he trusts you." Evelina rose. "I am going to Northwick." Lord Everard stood. "You will do no such thing." "I will. You will not drag this family deeper into disgrace." Evelina looked at him, and for the first time he seemed less like a father and more like a gate that had stood closed too long. "This family dragged me into disgrace the moment it decided my dignity mattered less than Rosamond's disappointment." Rosamond stood. "You think you have won because he noticed you." "No," Evelina said. "I think I have lost many years because I believed being noticed by this family was the same as being loved." The words struck harder than shouting. Even Lady Marceline looked away. Aunt Honoria stepped forward. "I will accompany her." Lord Everard's eyes flashed. "You will not interfere. I am far too old to begin obeying foolish men now." And that was how Evelina left Ashmere House. Not hidden upstairs, not dressed in grey to disappear, but seated beside Aunt Honoria in a carriage bound for Northwick Hall. When they arrived, Lucian was waiting at the entrance. No hesitation, no coldness, no doubt. He came down the steps before the footman could open the carriage door himself. "Miss Whitcomb." Evelina searched his face. "I did not start this." "I know." 2 words. That was all. But they struck the fear from her chest. Aunt Honoria gave the Duke a long, approving look. "You answer quickly. I like that." Lucian almost smiled. "I try not to be slow when someone's honour is burning." Inside Northwick Hall, he led them not to a drawing room but to his study. Amabel was there too, sitting fiercely in a chair with folded arms. "I wanted to come to Ashmere and shout," she announced. Lucian sighed. "I advised against shouting." "You did not advise, you forbade." With wisdom. With Uncle's stubbornness. Despite everything, Evelina smiled. Then Lucian handed her a packet of papers. "These are the only letters connected to my brother's death." Evelina stared at them. "You are showing me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because trust should not be demanded while truth is hidden." She opened the packet carefully. The letters were not scandalous. They were heartbreaking. His brother had written of fever, fear for his wife, and his wish that Lucian care for Amabel if the illness took them. Nothing shameful, Nothing dangerous, only grief and love. Evelina looked up. The rumor is entirely false. Yes. Then who? Lucian's eyes hardened. I suspect you know. Evelina closed her eyes. Rosamond. Her own sister. A knock sounded. The butler entered. Your Grace, Lord and Lady Whitcomb have arrived, with Miss Rosamond. Evelina went still. Lucian looked at her. You need not see them. Yes, she said quietly. I do. They gathered in the great hall, where Ravenscar portraits watched from the walls like judges. Lord Everard entered first, red-faced with controlled fury. Lady Marceline followed, pale and anxious. Rosamond came last in pale blue, looking wounded enough to convince anyone who did not know better. Your Grace, Lord Everard said stiffly, we came to correct a misunderstanding before matters worsen. Lucian's voice was ice. How generous of you, considering the misunderstanding began in your house. Rosamond pressed a hand to her chest. Surely you do not think I— Yes, Lucian said. The directness stunned her silent. Lady Marceline whispered, Your Grace, please. No, Evelina said. Everyone turned. Her voice was quiet, but the hall carried it clearly. No more smoothing, no more pretending, no more calling cruelty a misunderstanding, because the truth is inconvenient. Rosamond's eyes flashed. You have no proof. Aunt Honoria tapped her cane once. I do. Rosamond froze. Honoria reached into her reticule and withdrew a folded note. You gave this to your maid and told her to deliver it to Lady Fenwick's companion. Unfortunately for you, the maid brought it to me first because she has a conscience, which is more than can be said for some people raised with French tutors. Rosamond went white. Lord Everard snatched the note. He read it. His face changed. Lady Marceline covered her mouth. What does it say? Evelina asked. Aunt Honoria answered. It says Lady Fenwick should ask about secret Ravenscar letters and imply Miss Evelina has them. It says the suggestion must spread before the Duke publicly attaches himself. Lucian looked at Rosamond with disgust, so controlled it was almost worse than anger. You attempted to ruin your sister and use my dead brother's name to do it. Rosamond began to cry. Not softly now. Desperately. I was supposed to have this chance, she said. All my life, they told me I was the one, the beautiful one, the one who would marry well. Then he came here and looked past me as if I were nothing. Evelina stared at her. Now you know how I felt every day in our house. The words silenced Rosamond completely. Lord Everard's hand trembled around the note. Rosamond, how could you? She turned on him. Because you taught me. You both did. You told me my worth was being chosen. You told me Lena's life was a warning. You made me terrified of becoming her. Lady Marceline began to cry. Evelina felt no victory. Only exhaustion. The truth had finally entered the room, but it had brought years of ruin with it. Lucian stepped beside her. Lord Whitcomb, this rumour will end today. You will write to every house connected to its spread. You will state that the accusation was false, malicious, and originated from within your family. You will not name Miss Evelina. You will not excuse it. Lord Everard stiffened. That will damage Rosamond. Lucian's eyes darkened. She damaged herself. Rosamond sobbed. Lady Marceline reached for her, then stopped, as though unsure whether comfort would be love or cowardice. Lord Everard looked at Evelina. For one brief moment, she hoped. Not for perfection. Not for a grand apology. Just one sentence that placed her above pride. Instead, he said, must this be so public? Something inside Evelina closed gently. Not violently. Not with hatred. Just closed. Yes, she said, because my humiliation was always public enough. Lord Everard looked away first. The letters were sent that afternoon. By evening, the rumour had begun to collapse. By the next day, society knew two things clearly. Miss Evelina Whitcomb had not trapped the Duke of Ravenscar, and the Whitcomb family had nearly destroyed its eldest daughter trying to secure a future for the youngest. Scandal did what scandal always does. It fed. But this time, it did not feed on Evelina alone. Invitations disappeared from Ashmere House. Rosamond's admirers withdrew politely. Lady Marceline stopped sleeping well. Lord Everard aged visibly within a week. And then, when society expected Duke Lucian to distance himself from the entire family, he did something no one predicted. He hosted a ball. At Northwick Hall. Every important household received an invitation. Every gossip came hungry. Every mother brought a daughter, just in case the Duke's interest had been a temporary madness. The ballroom glowed with candlelight and winter flowers. Musicians played beneath a painted ceiling. Servants moved with silver trays. Amabel sat beside Aunt Honoria, wearing a ribbon Evelina had tied herself. Evelina arrived with her aunt, not her parents. She wore deep green silk. Not grey. Never grey again. When she entered, whispers swept the room. Some curious, some admiring, some ashamed. Lucian waited at the centre of the ballroom. Rosamond stood near the wall with Lady Marceline, pale and humbled. Lord Everard stood behind them, stiff as stone. He had come because refusing would confirm disgrace, but Evelina barely looked at them. Lucian crossed the room toward her. Every eye followed him. He stopped before Evelina and bowed. "Miss Whitcomb, may I have the first dance?" She placed her hand in his. "You may." The waltz began. For a moment, there was only music, candlelight, and the steady warmth of his hand through her glove. Then he said quietly, "I have a question. This seems a dangerous place to ask one. I prefer witnesses." Her breath caught. Lucian guided her to the centre of the floor as the music softened. The dancers around them slowly stopped, sensing something. He released her hand only long enough to reach into his coat. Rosamond's face crumpled. Lady Marceline gripped her fan. Lord Everard went still. Lucian opened a small velvet box. Inside rested a ring set with a dark sapphire surrounded by diamonds. Evelina could not breathe. "Miss Evelina Whitcomb," he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "I have spent years surrounded by women trained to be admired. Then I met one who was never trained for display, only for strength." Silence swallowed the room. "You saw broken things and repaired them. You saw frightened people and protected them. You spoke truth when comfort would have been easier. You were hidden from me because your family feared I would notice you." His eyes held hers. They were right. A sound moved through the guests. Half gasp, half sigh. Lucian lowered himself to one knee. "I refuse every arrangement, every expectation, and every polished performance placed before me. I choose you. If you will allow it, I would be honored to spend my life proving that you were never the lesser daughter." Tears blurred Evelina's sight. For years, she had folded herself into the corners of rooms so others could shine. Now an entire ballroom watched her become visible. Not because she was rescued, because she was recognized. "Yes," she whispered. Lucian smiled. This time, everyone saw it. "Yes?" he asked, softer. Evelina laughed through tears. "Yes." Applause rose around them. Amabel cheered louder than anyone. Aunt Honoria wiped one eye and muttered, "About time." Lucian slid the ring onto Evelina's finger. Across the room, Rosamond cried silently. Not with rage this time, with the first painful understanding of what envy had cost her. Lady Marceline lowered her head. Lord Everard looked at his eldest daughter as though seeing her clearly had come too late to feel like anything but grief. Months later, Evelina married Duke Lucian Ravenscar in the chapel at Northwick. Not hidden. Not hurried. Not dressed to disappear. Amabel walked before her with flowers and solemn importance. Aunt Honoria sat in the front pew like a victorious general. Lady Marceline attended quietly, weeping through most of the service. Lord Everard gave Evelina his arm, but not because he owned the right, because she allowed it. At the chapel doors, before they entered, he whispered, "I failed you." Evelina looked at him. "Yes." His face tightened. "I am sorry." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she answered, "I hope one day I can believe you fully." It was not forgiveness. But it was more than he deserved, and he knew it. As Duchess of Ravenscar, Evelina became loved not for beauty, nor performance, nor charm arranged beneath perfect light. She became loved because Northwick changed under her care. Tenant cottages were repaired before winter. Amabel grew into a bright, secure child who no longer feared being unwanted. Servants were paid fairly. Village children received books. The estate became warmer, not weaker. Rosamond did not marry that year, or the next. For the first time, she was forced to discover who she was when no one was trying to sell her beauty to the highest title. It humbled her. Slowly, painfully, perhaps even honestly. One spring afternoon, she came to Northwick alone. No silk performance, no practiced laugh, just a young woman carrying shame in both hands. "I hated you," Rosamond admitted in Evelina's garden. "I know. I thought if he chose you, it meant I was nothing." Evelina looked at her sister. "And now?" Rosamond's eyes filled. "Now I think we were both taught the wrong measure of worth." Evelina was quiet for a long time. Then she took her sister inside for tea. Because kindness had never been weakness. It had only been waiting for a house where it would not be used against her. Years later, society still told the story. How the Whitcomb family tried to marry off the younger daughter first. How they hid the eldest in grey and pushed beauty into the sunlight. How the Duke of Ravenscar walked through the wrong corridor and found the woman everyone else had overlooked. And how, when every polished daughter in England waited to be chosen, he refused them all, except her.